Hey everyone, Vince here, blue belt from Sabre Jiu-Jitsu, and
Drea, Sabre Jiu-Jitsu, brown belt.
and today we're going to talk about Jiu-Jitsu, hobbyist versus competitor. So Drea, in your opinion, how would you differentiate hobbyist versus competitor when it comes to Jiu-Jitsu?
I'd say that a hobbyist is a person that likes to come in and train, but trains Jiu-Jitsu as any other hobby where they enjoy it. They come in when they can, they have a good time, they get their rolls in, and then they go home and come back the next day after work. So it's kind of they come in when they can and they just enjoy it and have a good time. And it's not as intense for some hobbyists, I'd say, because they just want to come in, get their training, learn, get some rolls in, get a good sweat on, and go home. Yeah.
And the competitor, how would you define a competitor?
I feel like there's levels to competitors. The first level, I'd say, or the top level, would be like an elite competitor who's fighting in the adult division constantly, is invested in training multiple times a day. I'd say probably around 4 to 6 hours a day, depending on the competitor. They're invested in training outside of the gym as well, outside of jiu-jitsu, where they're focused on strength and conditioning. They're also invested in their nutrition, supplementation, just like a professional athlete in any sport. Because in jiu-jitsu, to compete at that high level of grappling, you have to be completely invested. And we say that adult division because that's somebody who's anywhere from 18 to 30. But even some younger competitors in their teen years are also professional athletes and high-level competitors. And then I'd say that there's another level of competitor, which is like the master's competitor, which is kind of where I fall, where we have full-time jobs. A lot of elite competitors compete and do that for a living and get sponsorships and are able to live daily from what they earn from sponsorships and people that support them. Then you have masters competitors who are 30 and over that most of the time have a full-time job, a family. They come in and train as much as they can, usually more so than once a day, I'd say twice a day. Like myself, I try to train twice a day. Still invested in nutrition, of course, and taking care of their body, invested in strength and conditioning because they're still competing. But the difference is the level of competition and not being as young and also not being as available to train and compete as much. They kind of find that level of competition in masters where everyone's around the same boat or in the same boat and around the same level. But yeah, so that's like a masters competitor. Then I'd say there are some hobbyists that come in all the time to train when they can and are, having a good time, but they kick it up a notch and level up, I should say, when it's time to compete. So let's say they're aiming for a few bigger tournaments. They'll come in and train harder, a few months prior, and then by the time competition comes in, they are ready to go. I'd also say that with competitors versus hobbyists, a lot of times competitors are more ready year-round to compete and to be able to just jump in any competition because they train so much and it's a regular thing for them daily. Versus a hobbyist, like they have to get ready for competition. A lot of times competitors are usually already ready to go because of the way that they live their life. Their lifestyle is different. So.
And I think there is a spectrum, right? It's not just you're a hobbyist or you're a competitor. So as you just mentioned, there's going to be everything else in the middle, just like with anything else.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, I fall more on the hobbyist side. I competed at white belt twice, though personally, not that I didn't enjoy the competition, because I'm glad that I did it. And it was a good experience, but I just had that like butterfly feeling, right? And I guess that's normal. And it was like an anxious feeling, and I don't like feeling anxious. Granted, I did lose both my matches, so maybe it would have been different if I won. But just from that experience, I just me knowing myself, I really just like to come in here, learn, and I also think just because I'm a hobbyist, it affects my training style, right? I mean, I'm here to learn. I'm more of a flow roller than anything. So anytime that I'm rolling with someone, it's usually I go at their pace, and if they kick it up a notch, then I kick it up a notch, and or Coach B will say, hey, we're going to do comp rounds. Then I know it's serious, right? But for the most part, I'm not like trying to go at it 110%.
Pound everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So it's more of like a flow roll for me. So I think that's my personal style and how I approach jiu-jitsu, because doing it that way, I enjoy it a lot more. It's not as serious. What's been your experience, and can you talk a little bit more about your journey competing, where you kind of fall within this spectrum of hobbyist and competitor?
For sure. I'd count myself as a competitor, but at the master level. For that, what I mentioned earlier, like having a full-time job and not being as young as the adult competitors, and I'm not in the adult division. But I do train more than once a day, and I do invest in, health and nutrition outside of the gym, of course. Not that other people don't, but I think, as a competitor, you really have to keep on track. So if you don't keep on track, you're not able to compete because your body just changes. But for myself, like I wrestled in the past, so I was just thinking about how you mentioned butterflies and being nervous, and I think a lot of that got that kind of not got out of my system completely, but wrestling back when I was in high school really got the stage fright out of me because there were so much nerves, being like, I don't know, 15, 16 years old and wrestling like every weekend. So getting used to that really helped. When I started jiu-jitsu, I think I knew that I wanted to compete. I didn't know the art yet, and I didn't know like the divisions or anything like that, but just coming in, I knew that, okay, if I enjoy this, I plan to compete. I think it's just part of your nature if you're competitive or not. I started in an in-house tournament. It was like my first tournament, and I was a white belt, and I think I had been training maybe like 5 to 6 months, training probably, I don't know, four to five times a week or more, I think. And I was nervous, so that's normal. I went in a division just against guys because I came in and I signed up for the tournament, and I was the only girl. And Brian was like, Brian, our black belt, he said, you can compete against the boys if you want. They're bigger than you, but it's up to you. And I was like, yeah, I'm here. And I tried to prepare for this, like, let's do it. And I actually lost, and I was really bummed. I just was like, man, it sucks. I'm a white belt. I just started, but I wanted to challenge myself, and I went against a couple other white belts that are within our gym. One guy was in our gym, and another guy wasn't. But I felt that I did well considering the situation. But what I was bummed about was just something that was out of my control, and that's okay. But yeah, so that happens. And then later on, I started training more after that. And at blue belt, I wanted to compete more. So then I got into doing IBJJF competitions, which are like the higher level competitions within jiu-jitsu. And so I was able to do well there, and I thought, okay, let's keep challenging myself. So then I did Nogi Worlds, did pretty good, and I was like, I want to keep going, so I just kept going. But I did have a break where I wasn't able to compete for various reasons, and that was like about a year and a half. And then I did 2 huge competitions like a year and a half later, and I did well. I'm like, okay, I want to keep going. So I'm never satisfied with my competition performance unless I'm getting gold all the time, so it's good to keep challenging yourself. Coming into class every day, you were mentioning about being a hobbyist and kind of flow rolling more and only turning up when they turn up on you. I think as a competitor, you roll differently most of the time. You look for the best training partners in the room a lot of times. Like, we roll with everyone. Everybody rolls with everybody. But when you are a competitor, like, you should challenge yourself to roll with the people that you'll have a harder time with or will challenge you more, because that's what you want. You want it to be hard on the mat, in the training room, so that when you get out to compete, it's a little easier, or you'll compare it to be like, well, man, my training partners are tougher than my competitors. So you look for that. So it is a different mindset being someone who competes a lot versus someone who doesn't. When you train every day, there's a different mindset. Yeah, the focus is different. Yeah, for sure.
Completely. And I think it's as you just said, it's that mindset. Because when I go into it, I'm just more like, I'm just here to, like have fun and just kind of go with the flow. And then there are definitely those competitor types that, when we do get paired up, I know that they're a competitor. Right. So for me, I'm like, okay, I got to be on it, because if I'm just relaxed, they're going to kill me.
Right. And you want to be a good training partner too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, like you want to be like, I want to give you, that's how I feel when I know I'm training with someone. Like, I want to give them everything that I have so that, they have a good role.
Yeah. Like tailored to the partner and then their goals, right? So.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
And what would you say, like, because I get this question, people have asked me before, or just a common jiu-jitsu question is, do you have to compete to be legit? right? So some people are like, well, he's like a black belt, but does he compete? Well, like, is he legit? Or even like you're a purple belt that competes or doesn't compete. So like, do you have to be legit? Like, do you have to compete to be legit?
Short answer is no, but when you say legit, I'm thinking someone that, knows jujitsu well, can teach it, can execute it, and apply it, outside of the gym and also in the gym. No, you don't have to compete because it's just about your mindset and how you train. If you want to be someone with a career in jujitsu, earning money, sponsorships,
because it works. Because if it works in competition, then it works. Because for those of you who are thinking about competing or haven't competed yet, once you do compete, there is this. It happens so fast, right? And then you can really test if your techniques work or don't. So that's really the stage of, okay, is my jiu-jitsu good, or does it really work or not?
Right.
So.
And being a competitor also, I have to say, doesn't define you, as a practitioner or even your own jiu-jitsu game. So don't let that always be. Sometimes I feel like people, if they lose or if they win like that, they feel like that defines their jiu-jitsu, but it doesn't. It's really daily. Like, what happens in the gym every day? Do you come in every day? Does it work every day? On the competition mat, it's just a lot different. So I wouldn't use that as a scale.
And I think it just comes down to knowing the type of person you are, right? So it's like there are some high-level black belts here that don't compete often, right? But then there are also a lot of black belts here that compete often and they do great as well. So it's really finding how you see jiu-jitsu fitting into your life. I think that's what it is, right? So that's one of the key things is people think or always ask me like, oh, do you compete or like how often do you go to jiu-jitsu? It's like I don't compete, but I go to jiu-jitsu because I like it. They're always like, why are you going so often? It's like it's just fun for me. It's not like I'm a competitor. Just because I go often doesn't mean I'm a competitor. It's just because it's a lot of fun. And once you get into jiu-jitsu, you'll realize it's one of those things that you can get really addicted to really quickly, right? Because
why are you addicted? I'm curious. I don't think
I've
ever. Yeah, like what brings you back into the gym like every day?
Honestly, that's a good question. The camaraderie, right? I think that's a huge thing for me because a lot of times once I'm done rolling, I'm usually one of the people that stay after and just hang out, right? So that piece of it for me is really big, but also it's just learning. And I think for me, I have a learning mindset. So anytime that I don't know something, it really not like rattles my brain, but I start questioning. I'm like, okay, how do I do this? How do I do this? And it's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
So when I get on the mats, it's you're literally playing like chess or it's like a puzzle and you're trying to figure it out. It's like, why didn't this work? Why didn't this work? And then so as I've been going through this journey, I've been getting a little bit better each time. And then so that also adds to the fun part of it as well. But for me, it's the learning and then also hanging around like cool people, right? Because I'm not one of those I'm not a competitor to where like every round is a hard round for me. Actually, I would say 95% of my rounds. Yeah.
I'd say you get good rounds. Yeah.
I get good rounds with especially like it depends who I'm going up against, right? And then usually it'll start slow, but then it'll pick up afterwards, and then it'll start getting harder and harder, and then it'll be a good roll. So
I think it starts slow for a lot of people because you're kind of feeling your opponent out or your partner out. Yeah. And so you're kind of just like, okay, what are they doing? And then when you realize, like, okay, I'm going to do this, then it starts to pick up. Yeah.
And, one last bit of thing. So what would you advise to people who, maybe white belts or maybe even a blue belt or higher, like, yeah, I haven't competed yet and I want to compete, but I don't know, but I kind of want to. So what would you, if they're kind of on that line, on the fence of like, how would you, like, what would you advise them? Or if they were to compete, what's a good game plan or what's your advice to them?
I'd say that if you want to compete, that you should compete. It's the best way to challenge yourself, to challenge what you've been learning in jiu-jitsu. But it's very, it makes you dig deep, and it really causes you to face like some fears that you may not even know you have. And you come out better every time, regardless of the results, whether you win or lose. Like, I think that you come out better. So I would say if you want to compete, if you have the desire to go ahead and do it, but check with your black belt first and have them tell you, like, are you on the right path to competition? And if you're not, they'll tell you what to do. But I would say, you know, you have to invest more time in the gym if you're not already, and also outside of the gym, so that you feel prepared, because you never want to come into a competition thinking, I really, really could have done a lot more. Like, you may feel nervous, like, man, you know, maybe I could have done this, but you never want to go to a competition and feel like, man, I really should have trained more. You know, you should feel confident, like, okay, I've been training and now I just have to give it all I have. So,
yeah. I think that's something that helped me when my first competition, when I did compete, was because Coach B, we were working on a lot of things, but he said, make sure you come in with a game plan, right? So for me, I was like, I work better off my back, so I was like, I'm going to pull guard.
Right.
I'm going to pull guard. So with
Coming
both,
with a strategy.
yeah. So both my opponents that I had, I pulled guard, and it was, but the funny thing is, my first match, I pulled guard and he pulled guard. So it was like a double pull, and then I landed up a little bit, and then so I ended up being in his guard. But then the second guy...
Did you get a 2-point, did you get any
no.
points for coming up? Really?
No, I think, well, I came up, I was like, because I put my foot on his hip, and then he went down too, and I kind of came up, I was like on my knee, and then I was kind of in like half guard, I think, and then he ended up getting me in his full, and I was just trying to break his guard for like 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
It was probably shorter than that, but it felt really long. And then next thing you know, he ended up, I opened his guard, and then he swept me, and then he got side control, and it was just like knee on belly, knee on belly, knee on belly, knee on belly, and I was like, oh, this is terrible. And I lost by, I was down like 20 points. I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
Right.
And then it was just, I had that adrenaline dump, and then it was, I couldn't, like, it was just happened so fast.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this is insane. And then I got submitted. So.
Yeah.
But the second opponent I had a little bit better, easier time with. So, but then, yeah. So.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Perfect. Well, I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Tune in next week for another episode with Drea.
Bye, guys.
See you all later.
See ya.